Hello and welcome back to Bengali Girl. This is your podcast host Nikita and I'm so grateful that you're here. So I've been away on a break from podcast for quite some time, the month of April, and I think it's time to explain why, as there were a couple of planned and also unexpected reasons. I have been working on a couple of things in the background in terms of clothing and other business ideas that I have cultivated in my time without understanding the effort that I would have to give. However, we're still working through that and I will update you as soon as I complete a couple of things from the to-do list. And I've also, been heavily into spirituality and religion because it was Ramadan, and I wanted to shift my focus on devoting my free time to that. But other than that, my father was also not well, which you would know if you followed me on my Instagram, which is Nikita_TK. And I suppose it was mentally too heavy for me to work on a passion project when one of my family members is not well. But I would also like to take this opportunity to shout out or just show appreciation to 3 people. And before I begin, I think it's important to mention why I'm talking about these 3 people, and that's because honestly, they did this because all 3 of their hearts are made out of gold, and not because it was expected out of them or anyone had mentioned that they should do this, right? So the first 2 people that I would like to talk about are my father-in-law and my mother-in-law. I like to call them Baba and Ma, and they've been with my dad from the beginning till the end of his treatment, where they would wake up in the morning, go to the hospital, stay with my mom till late at night, till my mom had to tell them to leave because the hospital could not accommodate 3 people staying with the patient. And my mother-in-law would wake up in the morning and cook hot meals so that my mom did not have to rely on hospital food. And my mother-in-law would also send me pictures just so that I could feel like I'm there and not be anxious or worried. And the other person that I would like to talk about is my cousin's wife, or my sister-in-law. I just call her Apu. I really don't call her Bhabi, and that's because she's always been part of the family. I was really young when she came into the family and never felt like a Bhabi. She always felt like a sister, and she is a doctor, so honestly, she would help my dad, my mom late at night. She stayed over, she helped them, and I think these 3 people, may God bless them. Honestly, I'm currently tearing up just talking about this, because if these 3 people weren't there and weren't doing what they did, I would have probably been so anxious that I would have flown to Dhaka right away and been there for my dad, because but anyways, I am speaking about this because it's important to realize that you have good people around you. They might not be a lot. There might be few people who are really good at heart around you or you have in your circle, but it's so important to realize and acknowledge who they are and just be grateful that God has blessed you with these people around you. And so today's topic dwells upon insecurities and its place in our culture, and I will try to not go too scientific or bookish on this topic because we all are aware of the psychology of it, but I suppose no one really opens up or talks about their insecurities in public platforms as often. Maybe the foreign cultures do, but Bengali people really don't talk about their insecurities as much as we would like, especially people who have a platform to talk about, because they don't realize that once they talk about their insecurities or they address their insecurities, they're helping a lot of other girls or young women or men, who are impressionable, help and find comfort in what they have or they look or whatever. And it's highly important to talk about what you are not comfortable with, because when you're uncomfortable is when you grow. So people don't like sharing their negative news or unhappiness on social media, and I think I'm one of them too, because on the outside it seems that everyone's life, including myself, our lives are exciting and happy. However, we barely scratch the surface in getting to know someone through internet. And I completely understand when people say that, hey, this is my space on the internet and I like to keep it a positive vibe, or by sharing my achievements or just fond memories. The internet is definitely not a safe space according to me, and that is because when you post something, and this does not matter if you have a private or a public account, because there will always be certain people who would actually feel joy out of your sorrow. And I have identified a few people in my life right now, but that is just how people are. Now, insecurities can stem from childhood experiences, traumatic events, comparison with others, lack of self-confidence, or cultural and societal influences. So growing up as a Bangladeshi girl living in UAE, there was always like an added layer of proving it to other people that even though you grew up outside of Bangladesh, you were aware and understood the culture and respected it, because you heard, people's remark on kids who aren't connected to their roots and how these kids are apparently showing off just because they grew up elsewhere. So this is one of my insecurities. I'm very insecure of the fact that I am not completely knowledgeable about my own mother tongue. I'm very, very, grateful and respective of the history that how our mother tongue and became our national language. I can read and speak, but writing has always been a challenge. And oftentimes my mom would have to translate numbers to English for me. And I'm very insecure about it because I have been looked down upon it for, by family, friends, and even strangers. And my mom, bless her heart, she tried really hard for me to not have this insecurity. The fact that I can read and speak is probably because of my mom. So in my house, my dad would speak to us only in English and my mom would speak to us in Bangla, so that we are aware of the two different languages that are going around wherever we are, and also learn the language. And the fact that I can read is because my mom would have someone after school come to our house and teach me how to read the Quran and understand the meaning of it, but also teach me Bangla. So I had those kindergarten books that kids in Bangladesh, or grade 1 books that kids in Bangladesh use to learn the letters or the alphabets, and that's how I learned how to read. Writing, I can write my name and I can write my husband's name and my parents' name, but that's about it. And I regret it because, it is an important thing. The language is so beautiful. The alphabets seem like art. And the fact that you really can't write a full sentence is just sad for me. It might not be sad according to other people's standards, but that, I think, is how insecurities are. So your insecurities, for example, would not really be considered an insecurity by me. And girls and boys, they have their own set of insecurities. Boys are often told to not show too many emotions or not to cry because men are supposed to be strong, and apparently crying is a sign of weakness for men. And girls are told to cover up because they will attract guys and probably be harassed for it. And the harassment will be because of the way we dress and not because of how these men think. I was very reluctant to talk about this topic, and it's only because I knew that me talking about this meant I have to share my own experiences as well. And I was reluctant because I did not know how it would be received. But part of my reasoning for opening this podcast and it being a passion project for me has been that I need to talk unfiltered and raw. And it's high time that we address the elephant in the society's room, which is the obsession of Southeast Asian or South Asian people with the color of their skin. They would prefer being forsha or fair, and they would do anything for it. They would spend money, and I'm talking about lots of money. The whitening effect industry in skincare or laser treatments or any of those beauty treatments are one of the biggest industries in the country or in the subcontinent, because people are obsessed with it. And it definitely does not stem from the media or the fact that Fair and Lovely, advertises in such a way. It was of course, I'm not going to say it did not influence anything. Fair and Lovely ads were bad, and I'm glad they changed it, but if you look at the ads, they're still a bit problematic. But definitely these issues, or this obsession, definitely stemmed from way longer than Fair and Lovely, and it's definitely sad that it does, because it's still prevalent. I don't think it's going to change, because changing this ideology or this mindset in a generation would actually take 2 to 3 generations completely overhauling this idea. And unfortunately, things like these society influences or cultural, now they have become part of the culture. These cultural and societal influences are being passed down through generational trauma and childhood experiences that are causing lack of self-confidence and comparison with others. My experience with that, oh my God, where do I start? So when I was a child, I was not considered forsha according to this society, or fair according to the society. I was considered tan, and that I'm just using a good word for it. In Bangla, people called me kalo, right? Unfortunately for them. And growing up with listening to advices being given to my mom on how to lighten my skin color, such as drowning myself in the shower with milk, or using turmeric mask or honey on my skin, or not even going out to play. Yes. Hearing these stuff now when we are adults is completely baffling, but this was my reality and the reality for a lot of Bengali or Indian or Pakistani or Sri Lankan or Nepali kids growing up, because this is how our society would tell us that you need to be forsha to be considered a valuable member. And I'm laughing now, but honestly I was crying back then. And that's my coping mechanism. I laugh through the pain. But I think what it did, I'm sorry if I'm pausing a lot, and that's only because this is such an uncomfortable topic, but being uncomfortable means you're growing. So it gave me so much trauma as a child that I was not considered forsha, and I was being consistently compared with my sister, who was Bashada and very beautiful, and she still is very beautiful, but I was constantly being compared to her and made to feel like I was inferior, to the fact where people would ignore me in social events, and they would want to just talk to my sister. And this is kids that I'm talking about, aunties that I'm talking about. I just felt like a wallflower at that point. And for me, I think it's because at our house, my dad never made me feel like that, or my mom, even though she was being heavily affected by this because of people's remarks. She tried not to, make me do those things. She never made me shower with milk and stuff like that. But in our house, we were never really made to feel different. Both of us were pampered heavily by our parents. And so when I would go out and these things would happen around me, I would feel like confused on what's happening, because as kids, our world or our view of the world is shaped by how our parents view the world, or how our parents cope with the world. And I was just heavily confused as to why this was such an important topic for people to talk about when they saw me. and it did cause me the trauma, right? To the fact, or to the day when I see in the mirror, I see a tanned person. People around me tell me, no, you're forsha, or like you're fair, you're kind of fair according to society and stuff like that. But in my eyes, when I look in the mirror and I see myself, I do not see any change in my skin tone. And that can be a good thing, because now I've become very comfortable with my skin, or in my skin. But I feel bad for the 12-year-old Nikita who used or spent all of her pocket money in buying these whitening creams and literally burned her skin and like ruined her skin barrier because of it. I feel bad for all the girls who are still growing up listening to these remarks from their close ones or loved ones, or even from strangers, and it's affecting them to the point where this whitening industry is blooming through recessions or what, because people want to just become fair. And I still don't know how I got out of this insecurity. I think a big part of me coping with this insecurity was moving away, or exposing myself to different cultures, or following influencers or people with a platform who advocate for everything being normal. I think representation, the reason it's being pushed so much by people is because it's important to see different kinds of human beings on the screen, and know that normal is just a word. There is nothing that can be defined as normal, because everyone has their own version of normal. And oh my god, I'm turning red talking about this, because I never thought I would talk or share this part of me on such a platform, and for it to be forever on the internet. That was, one of my insecurities. And the second one is I am not competitive at all. And you, being a Desi kid listening to this podcast, would know what I mean, because competitiveness is being instilled into us as we're growing up. So we have to be the first in class, we have to be the first in a running race, or like a skipping race, or like just excel in everything you do. And my thing as a kid, and probably it's because I'm the youngest in the family, is everyone is good in their own, it's chill. I am not competitive. I don't think it's important to be the best at everything. Just be the best at what you're doing. Like, let's say you are running, do it properly, and that's good enough for me. If you are entering a competition, just give your best version, and if you win, that's great. But if you don't, you took the energy and the courage to join that competition. And obviously this has been a big disappointment for my parents and sometimes my husband. And that's because, my dad loves being competitive. My sister loves being competitive. So he would take both of us out on the field and be like, okay, let's do some racing now, or jumping jacks and stuff like that. Who can do the most? And, my sister is giving it all. And I'm just in the corner hey, can I pick up that flower? Or and my dad, or the society termed it as me being girly. But it's not me being girly. It's just me avoiding competition, because I think as a kid I realized that I might have some kind of an issue that I wasn't able to identify, which later on I realized was anxiety. I just hate the anxiety that comes with competition. And my husband is not like it as well sometimes, because I avoid playing games with him. We both sometimes I give up, but sometimes I get really pissed at him and I'm just going at it, no, I'm gonna win. He's the only person who can get the competitive side out of me. But Yeah, it does not end up good for us. So I think that's why I tried avoiding it. And he loves playing games like, Monopoly or anything. And I'm just like, yeah, let's just do it. Like, everyone's gonna win. Or even my best friend Maisha, oh my God, she can attest to this as well. So when we would go for dawats, and it would get boring at a point, like how much can you talk about what's happening in your life, or like, how much can you talk about ghosts and jinn? Like, come on, there's an end to that story, right? So everyone ends up like playing some games. So we would play games like Chor Police Dakat, or like, we would play games like the villagers and the murderers and stuff, or like any games like charades. We would very much always play charades, and I would hate being against her. Like, I would hate being in two different teams. Like if she's in a team A and I'm in team B, because oh my God, she gets so competitive. She can make me cry with her competitiveness. Like yeah. So I remember whenever we would play any games, the first thing I'll say is, I don't want Maisha in the opposite team. Whatever team she's in, I'll be there, because then I can chill and I know my girl's gonna handle everything. But growing up as kids, we're made to feel that if we're not being competitive enough, we're being lazy. To the fact where I feel like if I'm not doing, something, and if I'm just relaxing, it kind of makes me feel guilty for even relaxing. I would cry every night as a kid because my mom would tell me that I'm not gonna turn up as successful like my sister, because my sister is competitive, so she always puts her best foot forward and I'm just out there, breezing through life. So of course her telling me this is her being concerned, but who's gonna explain that to the little me? But yeah, oh my God, I can't believe I shared like these two things or insecurities that I'm so uncomfortable about sharing. Like, it took me so long to admit all this to my husband or like share this with my friends, but oh my God. Okay, it's out there. I'm not gonna edit this out. If you're hearing this, I probably just submitted it for it to be published, and I changed my passwords so that I don't log back in. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me being uncomfortable about my insecurities and still slaving it through here. But thank you so much. Over the next few episodes, I am gathering a few of my friends to come on the episode and talk about different topics of discussion. So I hope that will be fun as well, because I feel like just me babbling on might become a bit boring. But this is just me beating myself, okay? But thank you so much for listening to Bengali Girl, and I hope you come back to the next episode. Take care. Bye.